Hey guys, today I'm going to be sharing with you a trap where you can win the game in 7 moves with this position right here. Yes, this is checkmate. Even though the king is basically surrounded by its own pieces, there's no way to stop the queen. You might be wondering, how did we get into this position from just 7 moves? Well, let me show you. So we're going to start with d4. So this is a trap for d4 players, and it's against the Dutch defense. Now, the Dutch defense is not played all the time, but you're going to be prepared when you do face it. Now, most of the players who play this are trying to surprise you, okay? It's a different way of controlling the e4 square. It's kind of something that takes white d4 players out of their comfort zone. The idea is to play knight to f6, and you get these two pieces kind of controlling e4 like this. What we are going to do is play the crazy move, wait for it, h3. This is called the Korchnoi attack. Now, normally you want to be developing your pieces and castling and all that kind of good stuff. But in this case, we have a very specific reason for doing this. We would like to play g4. And if this trade happens, we've unleashed our rook, which gives us some nice pressure on the h-pawn. And we've also removed the pawn from controlling e4, so it gets easier for us to play in the center. For example, g4, something like this. We have the attack here. We can maybe play e4, and this is kind of a nice idea. However, the problem you might be thinking is, well, normally black's going to play knight to f6 anyway to control e4, but they also can do it and control g4 to stop us from going there. Why would we do this, right? Well, that's probably what they're going to play. Guess what? We're going to play g4 anyway. Now, before I talk about what's going to happen next, I want to just mention this trap is best for players under 2,000. Okay, and the reason I say that is when you get above 2,000, most of your opponents are going to kind of know what's going on. They've probably have a lot of experience if they've played. If they're going to play the Dutch against you, they probably have studied it quite a bit. So under 2,000, you're going to have the best success with this. Okay, because most players are not going to have any idea what you're doing essentially. So why are we going g4? They're going to take it because, I mean, if not, we're going to push by. It's pretty annoying for the knight to get kicked around like that. Most players are going to think of this as a free pawn and just capture you. And here we have a very interesting follow-up move, queen to d3. Now, queen to d3, if you look carefully, it's attacking the h-pawn. We have 2 attackers. It's only defended 1 time. But you say, Nelson, that's a pretty easy threat for black to deal with. They could just play h6, shut down our rook. But if they do that, we can win the game immediately. If you would like to pause, what's the winning move here for white? Well, hopefully you said queen to g6. That's just checkmate, because the king has nowhere to move and there's no way to block this. It shows the dangers of opening up this diagonal if you're not paying attention to the weaknesses along those light squares. Okay, so h6, h5, those moves, game is over immediately. A more logical attempt would be knight to f6. Simply retreating, you got your pawn, now you're going to go back and defend like this. Looks like it's a pretty solid position for black. But we have a crushing move. If you would like to pause, how can we win? If you had a chance to look at that, rook takes h7 is a killer move, and the reason it's so powerful is because it doesn't matter how black recaptures. We have queen to g6 again with checkmate. Notice it's the same thing even if the knight takes, right? Still queen to g6, checkmate. So this is the big problem that black has to figure out. Now you say, Nelson, what if our opponents are a little bit smarter? They see what's happening. And they play the best move in the position. The best move in the position is g6, because they shut off the queen this way, okay? Even here, we still have a nice follow-up, and the engine says white is still actually slightly better. So the move that I'm going to recommend is rook takes h7, giving up our rook, so that again, we can follow up with queen takes g6. Again, it's check. It almost looks like the same checkmate, but it's different because now the rook can block, okay? But what we're going to do is simply take the knight, and we have a knight and a pawn for a rook, which is not as good of a trade as you would like, right? The rook is 5 points, the knight is 3, and the pawn is 1, so it's kind of like 4 points for 5. But what else have we done with the position? Well, we've completely eliminated all of black's kingside pawns. There's no safe place for the king on this side of the board, which means if the king is going to get safe, they have to castle this way, which is not very easy to do for black at the moment. So as an example of how the game might go, let's say they play d5, trying to unleash the bishop on your queen. You're going to play this move, queen to h5. This is an important move to play, okay? It's important because, first of all, it pins the rook. The rook is not going to be very effective since he can't move. But also, if the king ever does try to castle, you lose the defender of the rook, and then we could simply take the rook. So it's a very annoying place for our queen to be, and black's going to have to figure out how to deal with that. As an example, knight to c6. We're going to play knight to f3, and now we're threatening knight g5 to attack the rook, which, remember, is pinned, right? And this is a tough position for black to be in. If they play a logical move like bishop f5, the game is basically over. They're in trouble. They have no way to deal with this threat. We're just going to get a free rook, essentially, okay? The best move would be something like e5, which this is not a logical move for white to play. Why would they do that, just giving up a pawn? Well, the point is that after we do something like knight g5, they now can defend their rook with the queen, and we end up with this big trade, okay? But even if this happens, we are still slightly better. It's probably an equal position. We're up a pawn, but black has some activity with their pieces, and so we would have to play a move like c3. The game's going to go on. We're probably going to lose our pawn, and the game continues. But according to the engine, it's an equal position. Okay, so for example, c3, they don't take back and allow the knight to jump in. You would play bishop f4, attack here, and the game goes on, and I don't really know what's happening. But it's not a bad position. That's what I'm trying to tell you, okay? So that's basically the trap, and it's very, very tricky unless your opponent has seen it before. Like I mentioned, it's going to be most effective if you're rated below 2,000, although I have played it at the higher levels, and you can still get into some interesting positions, all right? So next time you see d4, f5, let me know how this trap works out for you. h3, it's called the Korchnoi attack. But hope that helps you guys, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.